I used to work the night shift at a small roadside motel just outside a quiet Texas town. It wasn't one of those rundown horror movie motels, but it definitely wasn't glamorous either. The kind of place where truckers and families on long drives stopped for a night's rest before getting back on the road. We had 12 rooms, a flickering neon sign that said vacancy, and a lobby that always smelled faintly of coffee and old carpet cleaner. I started working there in my early 20s, mostly cleaning rooms, restocking supplies, and checking guests in when the night clerk took a break. It was boring, predictable work, exactly what I liked. But the thing about routine is, it tricks you into thinking you're safe. That's why that one night still haunts me. It was a Thursday, early autumn. I remember because the air was cool and the trees behind the motel had just started to turn orange. We weren't busy, just a few rooms booked, mostly regulars who stopped through every couple of weeks. When I came in for my shift around 7 p.m., my manager handed me the clipboard and said, "Easy night, only 6 rooms filled, everything else is empty. Room 9's under maintenance, so leave it alone." I nodded, barely listening. Room 9 had been empty for a while because the window lock was broken and the ceiling leaked when it rained. It was right on the corner, no cameras pointed that way, which always made it feel oddly cut off from the rest of the place. By 10 p.m., things had gone quiet. The front desk light buzzed softly. I was folding towels behind the counter when the office phone rang. "Front desk, this is Lily." A pause, then a man's voice, low, gravelly, almost polite. "Hi, I'm in room 9. Can I get some extra towels?" I froze. "Room 9? Sir, that room isn't..." I stopped myself. Maybe the manager had checked someone in after I left earlier. It happened sometimes when a traveler came in late. "Of course," I said, forcing a smile even though he couldn't see me. "I'll bring them right over." I grabbed a few towels from the cart and walked down the long hallway. The building had this weird echo at night. Every step sounded louder than it should. The hall was dim, just a single light flickering at the far end near room 9. When I got to the door, I noticed something immediately. The metal number plate looked newer than the rest, like it had been replaced recently. The curtains were drawn tight, but a faint glow leaked out from behind them. I knocked softly. "Housekeeping, I've got your towels." There was a pause, then the sound of shuffling inside. The door opened halfway. A man stood there, tall, thin, maybe mid-40s. He was wearing a plain gray hoodie, the hood pulled up even though it was warm inside. He didn't open the door all the way, just enough for me to hand over the towels. His hand, I noticed, was pale, with faint red scratches on the wrist. "Thanks," he said, voice quiet. "Sorry for the late call." "No problem," I said quickly, ready to go. But as I turned away, he added, "Hey, do you clean the rooms here too?" "Sometimes," I said, glancing back. He smiled faintly, but his eyes didn't match. "Good. You probably see a lot of things most people miss." Something about that sentence stuck in my head. I laughed nervously, said goodnight, and walked back to the lobby. When I got there, I checked the logbook out of habit. Every occupied room was listed with a name and payment info. Rooms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, and 11. Room 9? Blank. My stomach dropped. I called my manager. No answer. I didn't want to sound paranoid, so I didn't call the police or anything, but I decided to double-check the key cards. Each room had its own electronic lock, and I could see which keys were used last. Room 9's hadn't been opened since the day before, by maintenance. So how did someone get inside? I tried to focus on other things, folding sheets, wiping counters, but my mind kept going back to that man's face, his strange calmness, the scratches. Around midnight, I heard a sound echo down the hallway, a faint thud, then a dragging noise. I looked up at the monitor, grainy black and white security feeds. Every hallway showed empty, but the camera near the office door flickered, and for a split second, I thought I saw a shape moving past. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped into the hall. "Hello?" Silence. The sound stopped. I told myself it was probably a guest going to get ice, but the ice machine was on the opposite side of the building. An hour later, I was back at the front desk when the phone rang again. It was the same voice. "Hey," he said, slow and deliberate, "there's a leak in my ceiling. You might want to check it out." Something in his tone made my chest tighten. "Okay, sir. I'll let maintenance know in the morning. No, he said. You should see it now. Then the line went dead. I didn't want to go back there, but curiosity, or maybe fear, pushed me. I took the flashlight again, this time walking slower, listening. The hall smelled faintly of mildew and something else, metallic. When I reached room 9, I noticed the door was open a crack. Light flickered inside, a weak yellow glow. I called out softly, "Sir?" No answer. I nudged the door open a little further. The room was empty, the bed unmade. A half-drunk cup of coffee sat on the table, but the smell was stronger now, like iron and bleach. Then I noticed the bathroom door, closed, water running. I knocked lightly. "Sir, are you okay?" The water stopped, a beat of silence. Then, in a whisper that sounded like it came right behind the door, "You shouldn't have come back." I didn't wait. I turned and ran. My shoes slipped slightly on the tile, and I nearly dropped the flashlight. I didn't stop until I reached the lobby and locked the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I called 911. I told them there was someone in a closed room, unregistered, acting suspiciously. The dispatcher said they'd send a patrol car. I watched from the window as red and blue lights pulled up 10 minutes later. 2 officers went down the hallway toward room 9. I couldn't see much, just shadows moving, then one of them speaking into his radio. A few minutes later, one came back pale-faced and told me to stay inside. They found the room completely empty. No man, no belongings, nothing. But there was water dripping from the bathroom ceiling because a panel above it had been cut open. Inside the ceiling crawl space, they found old tools, a flashlight, and what looked like a blanket. Someone had been living up there. For how long, nobody knew. There were signs that the ceiling had been accessed multiple times. Dust disturbed, insulation moved aside. Maintenance workers later said they'd noticed weird noises for weeks but thought it was rats. The next morning, my manager came in looking pale. The police told him whoever it was had probably been slipping in and out of the building at night, using one of the old staff side doors that no longer locked properly. They said the man likely used room 9 because it was off camera. When I asked what would happen now, the officer just said, "Keep the door locked and stay aware." I quit that job 2 weeks later. I still drive past that motel sometimes on my way to visit my parents. The sign still flickers, and the lobby light is always on. But what gets me every time is that room 9's curtains are drawn, always, even though the room has been officially closed for maintenance ever since that night. Sometimes, when the sun hits the window just right, I swear I see a shadow move behind those curtains. I tell myself it's just my mind playing tricks on me, but every time I do, I remember the way that voice sounded on the phone. Calm, polite, almost grateful. "Thanks," he'd said. "Sorry for the late call." And sometimes I wonder if he ever really left. I used to work at a small-town police department on the night dispatch rotation. Nothing glamorous. My job was to answer calls, log incidents, and radio officers if anything serious came up. Most nights were just noise complaints, traffic stops, and the occasional domestic argument. But there's one night I'll never forget, the night we found her in that motel. It's been over 6 years, and I still think about her. It started with a 911 call just after 2 a.m. The line crackled, and at first all I heard was faint breathing. Then, a voice, hoarse, trembling. "Help me," she whispered. "Please, I'm in the motel, room 12. Then the line went dead. I tried calling back, no answer. I checked the caller ID, a prepaid cell phone. The GPS ping showed it came from the Sunset Pines Motel on Highway 7, a rundown, 2-story building that had been a trouble spot for years. Drugs, theft, prostitution, the kind of place where people disappeared quietly. I radioed 2 units to check it out. Officer Hale and Officer Mendez were on patrol nearby, so they headed over. I stayed on the line, listening, logging every second. When they arrived, Hale's voice came over the radio. "Dispatch, we're on scene. Parking lot's half empty, no visible movement." I could hear the wind through his mic. Then, Mendez's voice. "Room 12's got the lights off, curtains drawn." Hale knocked on the door. "Police, open up!" Nothing. He tried again, louder. Still nothing. Then Mendez said, "Hold on. I hear something. Inside." There was a faint sound on the radio, like tapping or maybe muffled sobbing. Then the feed cut out. When they came back on, Hale sounded tense. "Dispatch, we forced entry. Female found inside. Alive but barely responsive. We need EMS now." My heart was pounding as I typed the update. "Copy that. Ambulance en route." "Room's a mess," Mendez added. "Broken furniture, no ID, no wallet. Looks like she's been here a while." I remember that moment because the whole station went quiet. We all looked at each other. Been here a while. What did that mean? I stayed on the line as they waited for paramedics. Hale tried talking to her, but she wasn't making sense. The only thing she kept saying, over and over, was, "Don't let him find me again." When EMS arrived, they got her on a stretcher. Hale read off her description. Early 30s, thin, pale, dirty clothes, a fading tattoo on her wrist. No identification. Then Mendez said something that made my skin crawl. "The room's paid for in cash for the past 3 weeks." The next morning, detectives searched the room. They found no wallet, no phone, nothing personal except a small bag with some clothes and a cheap flip phone, the one she used to call 911. But what unsettled them most was what they found behind the dresser, a hole in the wall, small but deep, lined with electrical tape. Inside was a camera. It was connected by a thin wire that led into the next room, room 14. When they opened that one, it was empty. Sheets stripped, window cracked open. The person who had rented it was gone, checked out less than an hour before officers arrived that night. The name on the receipt was fake. I didn't see the woman again for several weeks. She was taken to a recovery center out of town, but her case stuck with me. Nobody came forward to claim her. No missing persons report matched her description. It was like she'd never existed. Until one night, about a month later, I got another call. This time from a different motel, about 40 miles north. "Dispatch," the voice said. "We just found a note under the front door. It says, 'Check room 12. My blood ran cold. Officers went there immediately. The room was empty, but on the bed was a single folded piece of paper. Inside, written in shaky handwriting, "Thank you for hearing me." That could have been the end. But 6 months later, a detective from another county called us. They'd linked her DNA to a missing person case. A woman reported missing 7 years earlier from Oklahoma. She had been living under false names ever since, hiding from someone or something. The details were never made public, but I read between the lines. Whoever she was running from had found her once, and she'd barely escaped. The motel, the camera, the fake name, it all fit. Someone had been watching her for a long time. Sometimes I still drive past that motel on my way home from work. It's closed now, boarded up, the sign rusted and half fallen. But I swear, every time I pass by, I see the curtain in room 12 move slightly. It's probably just the wind. But part of me wonders if she ever really stopped running. I travel a lot for work. I'm a freelance photographer, so I'm constantly hopping between small towns, staying in cheap motels, taking whatever jobs pay the bills. I've stayed in dozens of places over the years, but only one ever made me swear I'd never stay in a roadside motel again. It happened last spring, just outside a quiet town in New Mexico. I'd been driving for 8 hours straight when I pulled into a place called Silver Ridge Motel, a faded old building sitting on the edge of the desert highway. It was late, close to midnight, and the front office light was still on. Inside, a tired-looking man in a baseball cap checked me in. "Only got 2 rooms left," he said. 8 and 10. 10's closer to the road, so it's noisy. 8's quieter. "Room 8's fine," I said. He slid me the key card and nodded. But as I turned to leave, he added something that felt weird even then. "Don't move the mirror," he said. I stopped. "What?" "The mirror in your room," he repeated flatly. "It's mounted into the wall. Don't move it. We've had issues with guests trying to take it down." I forced a small laugh. "Don't worry, I won't redecorate." He didn't smile back. Room 8 was at the end of the hall, small, simple, a little stale-smelling but clean enough. The mirror he mentioned hung directly across from the bed, a tall, rectangular frame with a thick border, slightly crooked. I noticed something strange almost immediately. When I stood in front of it, the reflection seemed slightly delayed, like a half-second lag between my movement and what I saw. I chalked it up to exhaustion. I was dead tired. I took a quick shower, plugged in my phone, and collapsed into bed. At around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of static. My phone screen glowed faintly, but the noise wasn't coming from there. It was coming from behind the wall, a faint, buzzing hum, rhythmic, mechanical. I sat up, listening. Then, faintly, I heard something else, a click, like a camera shutter. I turned on the lamp. The room looked normal. The only thing that stood out was the mirror, slightly fogged in the corner, even though the air was dry. I got up and leaned close. That's when I noticed it. The glass wasn't fogged, it was scratched, fine circular scratches right around the center, like someone had been twisting something there. I tapped it lightly. The sound was off, hollow, not like regular glass. My stomach tightened. I pushed the edge of the mirror slightly just to see if it moved. It did. Barely, maybe an inch. Behind it, I saw darkness. At that exact moment, I heard footsteps in the hall, slow, deliberate. They stopped right outside my door. Then, a faint voice. "Everything all right in there?" It was the man from the front desk. I froze. "Yeah," I called back. "All good." He waited for a few seconds, long enough to make it uncomfortable, then walked away. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I went down to the office. He wasn't there, just a younger woman behind the counter. I mentioned the noise in the walls trying to sound casual. She frowned. "You were in room 8? "Yeah." Her expression changed slightly. "That room's supposed to be closed. The camera wiring in there hasn't been removed yet." "What camera wiring?" I asked. She hesitated. "The owner before us used to, record guests. It was a whole thing. Police were involved, but it's all gone now. I'll talk to maintenance about the noise." I didn't wait for an explanation. I grabbed my stuff, threw it in the car, and left. 2 days later, I was in a motel 2 towns over, sorting through my photos. I'd left the memory card from that night in my camera bag. I plugged it into my laptop to back up the files, landscapes, street shots, some test pictures from the road. Then, right in the middle of the folder, there was a photo I didn't take. It showed my motel bed, from the angle of the mirror. The timestamp was 2:11 a.m., right when I'd woken up to the sound of static. I deleted the photo immediately, but it didn't matter. The image is still burned into my mind. The reflection of me, half asleep, staring straight toward the camera without knowing it was there. When I reported it, the local police said they'd send someone to investigate. I never heard back. A few months later, I looked up Silver Ridge Motel online. It was closed. The website gone, phone number disconnected. But here's what unsettles me most. 2 weeks ago, while staying at a completely different motel, hundreds of miles away, I noticed something familiar. A mirror, same shape, same frame, same faint circular scratches near the center. And when I looked close enough, I could swear I saw a flicker, like a lens adjusting focus.